If you believe in the power of love, subscribe to Bear Tales for more heart-touching stories. Don't forget to comment your thoughts, because every love story deserves to be felt and shared.
After 20 years of a loveless marriage, I unexpectedly got a second chance when I was reborn. I found myself in the middle of divorcing Jack. The reason? He secretly brought his ex-girlfriend Jenna Monroe into the company and promoted her to the position of financial director without following any standard procedures. That caused the most intense argument we'd ever had, and after he stormed out, I ran straight to the hospital and terminated the pregnancy. When I opened my eyes again, I saw the familiar wall calendar and realized I had returned to 1988. With my head still heavy and aching, I staggered out of the bedroom. The living room was filled with the overwhelming smell of cigarettes. Jack was slouched lazily on the sofa, his long legs resting on the coffee table, puffing on one cigarette after another. The smoke curled between his fingers. Maybe it was the sensitivity of pregnancy or simply being fed up with the same smell for years, but I suddenly felt nauseous. Hearing me retching, Jack turned his head to glance at me, then slowly got up and walked over. His sharp features were as defined as ever, yet he never put out the cigarette in his hand. I threw up until nothing but bile remained, rinsed my mouth and looked up into the mirror. The reflection staring back at me was young, so young that for a moment I was dazed. It was the hottest time of the year in Canton. The balcony was stifling without a breeze. Jack leaned lazily against the railing, looking completely unbothered, exuding an air of indifference. Taking a deep breath, I spoke calmly. Jack, let's get a divorce. Tomorrow morning at 10, let's finalize it at the Civil Affairs Bureau. There's no point in torturing each other anymore. Without giving him a chance to speak, I lowered my eyes and continued. I know there's nothing going on between you and Jenna Monroe, but I really don't want to keep arguing about her. I refuse to waste the next several decades of my life on you because you're just not worth it. Seeing that Jack remained silent, I looked up at him and added deliberately slow, I'll go to the hospital this afternoon to deal with the baby. Let's part ways peacefully. Once we're divorced, you can be with whoever you want, Jenna Monroe or any of the girls at your company. I don't care. Hearing this, Jack finally reacted. His gaze darkened as he studied my face, seemingly trying to find some clue about my intention. A moment later, he flicked the ash off his cigarette and sneered with disdain. Really? Playing hard to get? That doesn't suit you. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him and simply muttered, "Oh," before grabbing my worn-out handbag ready to leave. Seeing I was serious, Jack suddenly grabbed my arm, his face twisted in irritation. Stop this nonsense, Lauren. You know very well Jenna and I are innocent. Do you have any idea how ridiculous you look right now? My company is at a critical stage. I don't have time for your little games. Besides, you don't have a job or any savings and now you're talking about getting rid of my child? Where do you get the nerve? He paused as if something had just occurred to him, then stared at me suspiciously. I yanked my arm free and slapped him across the face. With a cold smile I said, Jack, do you know what I hate most about you? Your arrogance. Your delusions. In my past life, Jack had repeated countless times that he and Jenna Monroe were innocent, but I had always treated his words like a joke. I knew the truth. They had used their so-called friendship as a cover for their constant ambiguity. The whispers in the company, the accidental sharing of a wine glass, the casual physical touches. They reveled in the thrill of it. Jack was no exception to the inherent flaws of men. Steadying my emotions, I took a deep breath and said resolutely, I'm divorcing you no matter what. I'm not keeping the child either. I knew I was being cruel to the baby growing inside me, but I couldn't let Jack destroy me a second time. In my previous life, it took me nearly 10 years to realize that Jack never truly loved me. He pursued and married me out of spite because Jenna Monroe had chosen the son of his superior instead of him. It bruised his ego. To get back at her and his so-called friends who mocked him, he set his sights on me. Back then I was 18. I was beautiful and confident, pursued by many, a recognized belle at the textile factory. I was also the first girl in the factory to wear a dress, high-heeled leather shoes, and a perm with cascading waves to work. Back then I imagined countless versions of my future, only to have all of them destroyed by Jack after we got married. Because I wasn't the woman he truly wanted. Because there was never any love. He never cared about my feelings. At the time I didn't understand. All I knew was to vent my anxiety by smashing things, acting hysterical. It wasn't until I saw him with Jenna Monroe that everything became clear. The moment Jenna got divorced, he used the excuse of friendship to bring her into the company. He even secretly rented out the apartment we had been given as a benefit by the textile factory to her. Calling it rent was laughable. He never let me see a single cent of it. He treated her with such care as if he were afraid to offend her. Even when his nicotine cravings hit, he held back and refused to smoke around her. As his construction company grew and his wealth skyrocketed, he started taking her to high-end events, introducing her to his business partners and friends. None of them knew I existed. To them, Jenna Monroe was Jack's most capable assistant. His confidant. Even on the night I fell down the stairs and woke up in this second life, Jack had been with her, helping her expand her network, preparing to invest in a business just for her. In Jack's heart, I was nothing but a placeholder. The mother of his child. The woman cooking his meals at home. Jenna was the one standing by his side. The one he truly wanted. His first love. When he faced me, he always said things like, "You don't understand," with an expression full of impatience and disdain. He would slam the door and leave. Every single time. "Is this really necessary?" He would sigh, pinching the bridge of his nose with obvious irritation. "Lauren, you should feel lucky. I provide you with good food and a comfortable life. You don't have to work or degrade yourself by drinking with clients. What more do you want?" When I was pregnant and bled from overexertion, I quit my job at the textile factory under Jack's persuasion and became a housewife. After the baby was born, I was overwhelmed, barely getting any sleep, losing handfuls of hair and struggling to keep up with everything. In his eyes, I was just a lazy freeloader who stayed at home all day. To everyone else, he painted himself as the perfect husband. "Lauren stays home and I take care of everything outside. I live like a king." He belittled me, made me dependent on him, while at the same time he praised Jenna Monroe for her career abilities and independence. Snapping back to the present, I masked my emotions and noted sarcastically, "Yes, you're right. I'm not satisfied. That's why we should finalize the divorce as soon as possible. That way, you can go find the little woman who wholeheartedly depends on you, Jack." Thinking I was jealous, Jack smirked and let out a mocking laugh. Loosening his collar, he said dismissively, "If you're so determined to divorce me, suit yourself. Just don't come crawling back with regrets." "Don't touch my things," she screamed, standing in the doorway to block their way. "This is illegal. I'll call the police." But the men ignored her, brushing her aside like she was nothing. "Ma'am, step aside. We're just doing our job." "Stop." I said stop. Jenna shouted, red-faced and furious. By the time most of her things were out, I walked out of the bedroom, my posture calm and composed, and looked her straight in the eye. "Jenna," I said lightly, "you're not the mistress here anymore. I think it's time you moved on." She turned to glare at me, shaking with anger. "I'm not a mistress. Nothing happened between me and Jack. We're innocent." I smiled faintly, my tone dripping with mockery. "Innocent? Is that what you call it? Why are you slandering me like this?" Jenna Monroe shot back, her voice trembling with indignation. She looked utterly humiliated, her eyes red as though I had dealt her the greatest injustice. Her whole demeanor screamed fragility, like a porcelain doll on the verge of cracking. I wasn't moved. Rolling my eyes, I sneered. "Give it a rest, Jenna. If you're not Jack's mistress, then why are you living here rent-free?" Hearing that, the crowd of onlookers, neighbors who had gathered to watch the scene, began whispering to each other. "So she really hasn't been paying rent? If that's the case, their relationship must be fishy. No wonder Lauren divorced him." Even the mistress moved in. Stop talking. Jack's here." The murmurs quieted when Jack appeared. He looked far more disheveled than the last time I saw him. His stubble was unkempt, his face gaunt, and the stench of cigarettes and alcohol clung to him like a second skin. "Was all this really necessary, Lauren?" Jack asked, his tone low as he immediately took Jenna's side. The thought of him siding with her while she was still living in my apartment made me sick to my stomach. Everything about it, the space she occupied, the air she breathed, felt tainted. Jenna, who had been glaring at me like she wanted to tear me apart, was suddenly restrained by Jack. He turned his eyes to me, a strange curve to his lips. Then he spoke as if humoring me. "Fine. As you wish." Jack turned to Jenna with a softer tone. "Jenna, I'll find you another place to stay. Somewhere better than this. Don't worry. As he spoke, his eyes flickered toward me, holding a silent challenge as if daring me to react. I didn't bother to look at him. Turning my face aside, I caught sight of Jenna, whose cheeks flushed a delicate pink. She was smiling sweetly as if imagining some romantic future. "Thank you, Jack," she said, her voice soft and nauseating. "If it weren't for you, I don't know what I would have done." The two of them flirted openly in front of me, their words tinged with ambiguity. I had lived through this kind of nonsense in my previous life. By now it didn't faze me. Instead, I gave an exaggerated shiver and muttered, "Disgusting. If you two want to cozy up to each other, go do it somewhere else. Don't dirty my sight." I personally saw to it that Jenna was driven out of the apartment that day, her belongings unceremoniously tossed outside. Jack left with her, but before he did, he shot me a look that I couldn't quite read. Some mix of anger and something else. When news of my divorce spread through the textile factory, my parents demanded I reconcile with Jack. They went so far as to threaten to disown me if I refused, their behavior no different from my past life. "Every marriage has its ups and downs," my father lectured. "You can't just talk about divorce every time you're angry. That's ridiculous." My mother paced back and forth in front of me, sighing incessantly. I finally snapped, unable to hold it in any longer. "Mom, do you know Jack is still tangled up with his ex? He got divorced and he immediately ran back to her, all eager and happy. After everything he's done to humiliate me, why should I have to put up with it?" My mother's face fell, but she muttered, "But nothing happened, did it? Jack said she was just going through a hard time and he was helping her out. And while you were pregnant, he made sure you had the best food and rest. He's always treated you well. Compared to most women, you're living a good life." Her voice softened as she continued, "Lauren, sometimes you have to turn a blind eye. Not everything has to be so black and white. You don't need to make such a fuss over it." She sighed heavily, her expression full of worry. "Your father and I are getting old. In the future, the only people you'll be able to rely on are Jack and your child. But you..." My father, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "Marriage isn't a game, Lauren. If there's a chance to reconcile, then do it. I think that boy still cares about you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come here to talk to us. He still treats us like his in-laws." Watching my parents, I realized they had completely fallen for Jack's act, just as they had in my past life. I had no patience left for persuasion. I said firmly, "It's impossible. I've already terminated the child. How could I start over with him again? Everyone knows you can't take back water that's been spilled. In my past life, I lacked the courage to act. I was always hesitating, too soft, too indecisive, and it cost me everything. If after reliving my life I chose the same path, willingly humiliating myself again, then I deserved whatever misery came my way. Ever since I quit my job due to pregnancy, Jack had looked down on me. He compared me to other women constantly, treating me like some sort of ornament he was forced to provide for. I depended on him financially while he kept his ex on the side. He wanted the perfect setup, stability at home while he enjoyed excitement elsewhere. It was as if he thought he could have it all. I knew that after my divorce the neighbors were laughing at me behind my back. "Don't worry," I told them with a mocking smile. "I'll be leaving Canton in a couple of days. You won't have to see me anymore. Out of sight, out of mind." I had made up my mind to leave for Beijing. Not only would it allow me to break free from Jack completely, but it would also save my parents and sister-in-law from the constant tension my presence caused. My extended family had an aunt who'd married and moved to Beijing, so I wouldn't be entirely alone. I bought a train ticket for the following morning and arranged to rent out the apartment I'd reclaimed from Jenna Monroe. I told no one about my departure plans. Canton was a city full of opportunities during its economic boom, and I knew I couldn't leave empty-handed. A string of candied hawthorns spotted me and squealed in delight. "Daddy, it's Auntie Lauren." She let go of his hand and ran toward me. James quickly stopped her, his face warm and calm as always. Jack's expression twisted immediately, his dark eyes flickering with something sharp, and his lips curled into a mocking smile. "So that's what this is. You really do have someone new, huh, Lauren? You're refusing me for a second-hand man? You'd rather be a stepmother? How cheap can you be?" His words cut like a knife, sharp and cruel. I took a deep breath, lifting my chin as I looked him straight in the eye. With a steady voice I said, "You're absolutely right. I'd rather be someone else's stepmother, have someone else's children, than ever go back to you or have your child again. Jack's eyes darkened even further, his gaze venomous. My words had hit him where it hurt most, piercing straight through his pride. Sensing his hesitation, I pried his fingers off my arm one by one and shoved his hand away. The walk back with James and Lily felt slightly awkward. After a moment of silence, I finally spoke, my tone lighter. That was my ex-husband just now. He's a bit unstable. I said those things to make him leave, so don't take it seriously, okay? I tapped my forehead awkwardly as if to explain away the situation. James chuckled softly, his smile gentle. Don't worry, I didn't take it to heart. I smiled, feeling a little more at ease. I had met James through his daughter Lily, and it wasn't until later that I learned he was a university professor, one of the most promising young men in the area. He carried himself with a calm, scholarly elegance, like a gentleman straight out of a book. If it hadn't been for the divorce caused by his wife's desire to go abroad, their family would probably have been happy together. Lost in thought, I didn't notice James glancing at me as if hesitating to say something. It wasn't until Lily ran off to buy a set of knitting needles from a nearby vendor that I felt James stop beside me. The small alley was full of children's laughter, echoing off the snow-dusted walls. James suddenly turned to me and said softly, "Lauren, about what you said earlier." Before he could finish, I gasped. "Oh, it's snowing again." I stretched out my hand, letting the delicate snowflakes land on my palm. The cold bit into my skin, but I couldn't bear to pull my hand away. "You know," I murmured softly, "it wasn't until I came here that I saw snow for the first time. White as far as the eye could see, painting a scene straight out of a dream." I blinked, then turned to James with a smile. "Oh, by the way, I'm moving soon. I bought a small storefront with living quarters on Wall Street. I plan to run my business there. Other than visiting my family, I probably won't come back here much." I glanced at Lily, who was playing nearby, and added softly, "She's a sweet girl, but kids can be careless. Make sure you and your family keep an eye on her. You can't be too careful these days." James was smart. He caught the meaning behind my words instantly. After a long pause, he withdrew his gaze and looked ahead at Lily, a faint smile on his lips. "Then I'll wish you success in advance. May your business flourish." "Thanks for the good wishes," I replied, smiling lightly. I walked over to Lily, crouched down, and tucked a red envelope into the pocket of her coat. After saying goodbye, I quickly made my way back to my aunt's courtyard. Only then did I let out a long breath of relief. Inside, my aunt was reclining on a rocking chair listening to the radio. When she heard me come in, she turned her head with a grin. "Did you have fun today? Just now Mrs. Lee came by and told me she saw you walking back with that young man James from next door." Before she could say anything more, I waved my hands defensively. No, it's not like that. We just bumped into each other on the way back and Lily was with him too." Seeing my flustered expression, my aunt sighed deeply and couldn't resist offering her thoughts. "Lauren, for someone who's been divorced, James is a great choice. Yes, he has a daughter, but Lily is well behaved and really likes you. You won't have to worry about getting along with her. I've lived here for over 30 years and I know James's family well. His parents are reasonable and James himself is a good man with a solid character. You're a woman, there's no need to carry the world on your shoulders. Think about it, won't you?" I knew my aunt meant well. After all, most people still had limited views on marriage and relationships, far less open-minded than they'd be years later. And she was right. Lily was a sweet child. But becoming someone's stepmother wasn't something I could accept. I didn't want to sound too harsh, especially since her advice came from a place of love. So I sat down beside her, looped my arm through hers and spoke gently but firmly. "Auntie, no matter how good James and his family are, being with him would mean compromising myself." She frowned, clearly confused. I decided to be even clearer. "Let's say I do marry James. No matter how much Lily likes me now, James would constantly have to balance his relationship with me and his daughter. There would always be friction, big or small. I don't think I'd ever be able to win against a child, and honestly I wouldn't want to. I'm selfish, Auntie. I don't have that kind of self-sacrificing nature. Being a stepmother isn't for me. Raising a child is hard enough, and it's even harder when the child isn't your own." I hesitated for a moment before continuing. "And Lily's mother, she didn't abandon her. He's just abroad. What if one day she comes back? How will James and Lily react to her? They can't just let her go. Where would that leave me? I've seen enough of men's white moonlight and first loves to last a lifetime, and I want no part of it. I've learned my lesson and I'll pass on that mess, thank you very much. My aunt looked like she still wanted to argue, but I propped my chin in my hand and said with a smile, Auntie, remarriage has always been tricky. If you marry someone better off, they dominate you. If you marry someone worse off, people say you're settling. I'm a businesswoman. I calculate costs better than anyone. I've never once thought about getting married again. Marriage isn't the only path for a woman, and I don't need it to prove my worth. I've got money, property, brains, and I'm not lacking for love. Why would I tie myself down? Hearing this, my aunt finally gave up, though she sighed heavily. You're stubborn as a mule, you know that. But there was a hint of relief in her voice, as if she could see how fulfilled I already was. She patted my hand and smiled faintly. After that conversation, I threw myself into expanding my business. I stopped playing small and began growing a legitimate clothing enterprise. As my business flourished, Jack inevitably reappeared, trying to worm his way back into my life. But no matter how persistent he was, I had already moved far beyond his reach. I never gave Jack a kind look, no matter what tricks he pulled. Whether he pretended to be drunk and whispered sweet nothings or played the pity card, to me he was nothing more than a clown. A ridiculous act at best. The wounds he had inflicted on me were real. Even if the scars healed, the marks were still there. I didn't believe in broken mirrors being pieced back together. I believed in karma, in watching the tables turn until the very end. Why should I forgive him just because he shed a few tears and muttered, "I'm sorry"? Why should I pretend nothing ever happened? The snow had melted by the time Jack finally stopped showing up. At first he tried every trick in the book. Pleading, shouting outside my shop, sending letters I never opened. I ignored him all the same. He was nothing more than a stain in my past, a ghost I had long since buried. But then one evening he did something unexpected. I was locking up my shop when I heard Lily's soft voice behind me. Auntie Lauren. I turned, surprised to see her standing there alone. Her tiny hands clutched the hem of her coat, her brows furrowed in a way that reminded me too much of James. She looked worried. Lily, where's your dad? She hesitated, glancing down at the snow-speckled pavement. He's at home. But someone came to see him today. A woman. My breath caught. I didn't have to ask who. Lily looked up, her expression serious beyond her years. She said she's my mom. A chill ran down my spine, one that had nothing to do with the winter air. James's ex-wife had finally returned. And just like that I knew. I had made the right decision. I knelt in front of Lily, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. How do you feel about that, sweetheart? She chewed her lip. I don't know. Dad looked strange. Like he was happy but also really sad. My chest tightened. James was a man who kept his emotions locked away, always level-headed, always in control. If Lily had seen the cracks in his composure, it meant he was truly shaken. Your dad loves you very much, I said gently. No matter what happens, that won't change, okay? She nodded, but I could tell she was still confused, still searching for answers she wasn't ready to understand. I walked her home that night, my heart heavy. I had thought I could leave quietly, that I could fade into my own future without looking back. But life had a way of pulling you into unfinished stories, no matter how much you tried to walk away. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just James's reckoning. Maybe it was mine too.